Okay, there we go. So last Tuesday when we were here, we set up server 3 and we did some basic configuration of it. We didn't finish the configuration. I think we got computer name, we got it activated, we got date and time set up, remote desktop set up, but we haven't joined it to the domain yet, I don't believe. I think we even got the networking set up. Let's go and bring up our server 3 and I'm going to log into it. And you remember what configuration tool that we used? Okay, so nobody remembers the tool. That's okay. Google would finally probably key you in on how to do it. S-config. Yeah, you know, good thing you got to S something. S-config. At least you remembered that there was a tool. Like, I remember there was something with a blue screen. That's all I remember. You could probably have Googled and figured it out. That's normally half the battle. Is months from now you're like, oh, I remember there was some type of tool you could use to configure the server. You at least know that, and you can normally figure it out. So S-config at the command prompt brings up this menu. So we should show server 3. Does everybody show server 3 for number 2? Okay, so we've already set the computer name and probably restarted the system. I believe we completed that on Tuesday. The remote management's enabled. Remote desktop is enabled with more secure clients only as an option. I'm pretty sure we set the date and time. Let's go verify network settings again, number 8, just to make sure those are okay. I'll hit number 8. It should come up, and I've got one index number of 0. I should have 192.168.1.3. I'm going to go ahead and hit 0 just to select it, and that's going to show me my whole configuration. Should have the 3 255s. .0 is the subnet mask, and I should have 1.1 and 1.2 as the DNS servers. Look at your numbers real close there. It's being a new day. Make sure it's 192.168 and you don't have like 129 or 186 or something like that. That's real easy to get them transposed, and you're looking at it at another day, you might be able to see that if you typed it wrong. So if you make any mistakes, you could click one of the numbers to retype them in. Everything looks good to me, so I'm going to do number what to get back to the main menu? Number 4. So I guess we're at the point of joining the domain. So number 1. Do we want to be a work group or a domain? I just said domain, so I'll put a D. Name of the domain, you remember? Contoso.com. The user. It shows an example there of domain /user, so that probably means I need to type Contoso /administrator. Now another window popped up asking me for the password. I don't know that I can see me typing it or not. No, it doesn't show me typing the password, but I'm going to assume that it took it and hit enter. That makes it really confusing if you start typing and then start trying to hit other keys, and it's taking every keystroke in as a password. So it's pass 1 2 3 4. You want to change the computer name before restarting the computer? No, I've already done that, so leave it at no. You must restart your computer to apply these changes. So that was really fast. It must have accepted the username password pair. So yes, I'll go ahead and restart. And getting logged in with the domain administrator account into the system's a little tricky. So when it comes up, if you just log straight in, it'll log you in as a local administrator account. You won't have any domain privileges. So we'll have to be real careful and read the screen to try to get into a domain admin, because it'll be administrator@contoso.com, not administrator. Server3 should come up pretty quickly. Bring us to a login screen again. When we first hit Control-Alt-Delete, it's trying to log us in as the local account. So read real careful. Enter credentials for administrator, or hit escape to switch users. So I'm going to hit escape a couple of times until it gets me to this section here. And it says select a user. Now it lets me hit other user. Now, like a Windows 10 machine, you got that other in the lower left corner. That's sort of what this one is. I can arrow down to other user. I think I've had a few tricks here where it wouldn't let me do that. I think in the past, sometimes I've had to log in as the local account, use sconfig and tell it to, like, whatever the menu option is, to log out, and then log back in and hit escape, because it's not allowed me to hit escape to get to other before.
Can you repeat what you just said, because I'm not getting it. It's not letting me.
Yeah, I couldn't get it either.
So let me look at your screen. You may be into, yeah, have you hit escape? Make sure you click in the DOS window and then hit escape. What happens if you hit enter? Oh, hit enter again. Password is incorrect. Okay, so hit OK. Now try to hit escape and see if it'll. No. Okay, so yours is acting sort of like what mine has done in the past. Just go and type in pass12344. And hit enter. Yeah, now type pass12344. And then type sconfig. And there should be an option to log off, number 12. And click yes. So I've had to do this before, and I thought I seen the DOS window. Did it close it?
The last time I watched, I wasn't even able to access the system configuration, but prompt it.
Nope, it's there. Just click in the window. It's just like slow refreshing. Don't close it.
Oh, I thought you said close it.
No, just click in the window there and maybe hit escape key. I don't know why it's looking funky. Can you move the title bar, or grab the bar there and move it around? Okay. Now do the, I guess do the Control-Alt-Delete button at the top. You actually hit Control-Alt-Delete. Hit cancel. Yeah, you have to use that little button under the file menu. Yeah, there you go. Now hit escape. And escape again. Now you can go to other user. Just kind of quirky there. So that's the what I've always used in the past. So go and log in as a local user, tell it to log off, and then escape finally works. It allows me to go to other user. So when you go to other user,
I can't type anything in this configuration do what she just did.
I'll look at yours in a second. So that allows you to do administrator@contoso.com, tab down and put in the password of pass1234, and that logs you in as a domain admin into Server3. So once you get your administrator in there, like an email address and then the password, you can hit enter and you'll be logged into server's domain administrator rights. So from this point, we may be able to control the system remotely now. We joined into the Active Directory domain. We've already done the what they call this in IT is staging. We've done the pre-staging, meaning the initial, if we get a new computer in, it always go into a staging area where you make sure that branding and security and patches and stuff are all installed. Whatever utilities and stuff are installed into the computer, administrator account passwords, and all that's secured down before it's deployed to whatever office location. Same thing with servers. The local login that we just did using sconfig is called staging. So we staged the server, put the IP address in, joined it to the domain, time zone, and everything's all set. So after it's staged, and you're supposed to be able to remotely manage your computers in an Active Directory network. So I'm going to close down Server 3 for now. We may have to go back to it. I'm going to go to Server 1 and connect into Server 1. I'll log in. And we should be able to, before I add it into Server Manager, I want to look at Active Directory users and computers. I see I have two domain controllers. I don't see Server 3 in the list because it's not a domain controller. If I look under computers, I see Server 3. Cool. It's not good to have anything under computers.
How'd you get there?
Under Server Manager, Tools menu,
Sure.
and Active Directory users and computers.
Thank you.
There's something that we're studying, we will probably study towards the end of the semester, called group policy. It's one way to help push out and control users and computer rights and assignments and stuff. And you're looking at all these icons here. You notice one of the icons looks a little bit different than the rest. The domain controllers one has a little extra symbol on it. It's actually known as something called an organizational unit that works with group policy. Group policy is nothing but registry settings that get pushed out. You know, Windows is almost 100% controlled through the registry settings in the background. So if it's just a plain vanilla folder, they won't accept group policy settings. So what I'm going to do, just as a best practice, I'm going to click on contoso.com. We'll do some of this later on too in the semester, but I'm going to right click and go to New Organizational Unit. There's also an icon for it in your bar up here that shows a manila folder with that same little extra symbol on it that domain controllers has. That's the same thing as going to New Organizational Unit. So I would normally just click that icon, but I'm also showing you can right click and go New Organizational Unit this way. Probably 10 different ways to actually get to this screen. You can even do it through Command Shell. Protecting it is normally a good thing to do. I'm just going to name this Servers and hit OK. So notice that created a new folder with that cool little symbol on it. So I'm going to go to Computers, and just like you can a file, and this looks like a file explorer just about, it operates similar. I'm just going to drag and drop it over there and click yes, I really want to move it. So any non-domain controlling server I would drag into that folder. I'd also probably create stuff for workstations and stuff. If it was a real company, I would break stuff down into geographical location, room numbers, or something like that. because a lot of times you need to push out like printers to a specific room. Like all computers in this one room goes to that one printer. That's all stuff you can do with group policy, and you'd create folders to organize. And we'll get into that later on in the semester. I just want to go ahead and preset that up in that style. So I'm going to close that out. So our server 3 is an Active Directory. It's visible. We put it in its own little holding location in Active Directory. I'm going to add that in using the Manage menu, Add Server. Again, I could start typing in and click Find Now. Our system is so small, I wouldn't really have to type anything. I could just click Find Now and it'd list all the computers. But like I said, when you get into a bigger company, you probably wouldn't want to do that. There may be thousands or tens of thousands of machines out there. You at least want to get part of the name in there. So Server 3 is the only one we don't have. So you click it, click the arrow over, and then click OK. Now Server 3 will be put into the list for managing. It should, after a moment, load in and show that it's active and activated. Sometimes it does that for a little bit. If it doesn't clear after a while, let me look at your screen. So access is not, you probably need to add server 2 in there. Or have you joined server 2 yet to your domain? Okay. Online access is denied, but you went ahead and go ahead and hit refresh again. So Server Manager sometimes just has some network slowdown and refreshing and stuff. So you're good. You can close that, and the little red flag up there, you can also click on it and click X on the refresh. So once it throws an error, it keeps the error on the screen until you exit out of it. So on Server 3, if I right click and try to do something like computer management, it will probably not load up. So after I give it some time, I'll probably get an error on the screen. Computer management's not going to load. That's because Microsoft has tried to secure servers down, really secure. They don't install any extra services. All the ports are closed down, firewalls turned on. And to actually be able to manage stuff, you have to go in and manage the firewall or add and remove services and stuff to open up things on the server. So right now it's in a really secure state. I can't even open up computer management. If we read this here, it's talking about Windows firewall rules may need to be enabled. So that you can remotely connect into the system. You can enable the rules using group policy. You can use a netsh command, or you could use PowerShell command to mess with the firewall. Probably what would happen with the company is they would actually have a group policy with specific firewall rules defined and apply it to the server's organizational unit, and then we'd just wait a few hours and Server 3 would open up its ports and we could manage it. But test out chapter 3 that we're supposed to be getting into next week. It goes over PowerShell. So I want to go over PowerShell. The netsh command is a DOS command. The DOS commands at some point in time will probably be phased out. It may be another 20 years, but at some point in time they'll be phased out and PowerShell will be fully in place, and by that time they'll probably come up with something other than PowerShell, maybe. I don't know. I'm going to right-click Server 3 and go to Windows PowerShell, and I will see if PowerShell is allowed. This is where I said we may have to go back to Server 3 if this wasn't allowed. We'll look on the screen. It says Server 3 right here, does it not? So we were able to remotely connect in with PowerShell. Good stuff. I am in my administrator accounts home folder inside the documents folder, so my path is like taking up over half the screen. So if I type stuff up here, I could run out of space really easily. Of course, it'd word wrap it and wrap around. But just for visibility for y'all seeing, I'm going to do CD / and hit enter. So I'll go all the way back to the root of C drive. If you took operating systems, it was CD / But Windows does everything backwards. Or Microsoft does everything backwards, I should say. I don't know why. Unix was out there first. They did /. They were forward looking. Microsoft's always backward looking. They did /. That's why I think.
It's not letting you type. Yep.
I think when you right clicked and opened up PowerShell, it was probably from Tuesday or Wednesday. It was still there, and it was no longer. There's not a network connection anymore, so it was just completely locked. So I closed it and reopened it. Okay, this CD /. Now, PowerShell. PowerShell has things called commandlets. And all of the PowerShell commandlets are in the form of verb-noun. Verb-noun format. There are a few verbs, maybe 10 verbs in all of the PowerShell stuff, maybe 10 to 20, something like that. A lot of the verbs that we're going to be dealing with, the most common ones will be like get, where you're wanting to get information. And it'll be a dash and some noun like network or something like that. Another verb is set, or that you'd want to change a setting. So typically you get information and you look at what's set, or what information is configured, and then you use the same command but you change it to set and you specify some value and say I want to set it to something else. There's other stuff in there like enable, disable, I think new. So there's some other verbs out there, but most of the verbs that we're going to be dealing with is get information or set information, get and set. So the first thing we're going to get, so we'll type that verb, dash. And here's the thing, you just have to like go out to Google and search like, how do I figure out firewall information, and what's the PowerShell command for firewall and stuff. So there's a lot of Googling, maybe a lot of creating like cheat notes and stuff and printing out what that you normally administer, what PowerShell commandlets do you normally deal with, printing those out as a little note to yourself. So we're going to get and net. It doesn't have to be, it's not case sensitive, but I'm typing how that you would see it if you read it in Microsoft documentation. Net firewall. Firewall. I don't have to continue. I can hit tab once I get to at least close enough, and I'll wait and I'll wait, and it's thinking and it's trying to search through everything, and it'll finally spell it out. If I only put in, so it should still get net firewall rule on your screen after a short time. I will show you if I didn't spell it all the way out. If I just went to net firewall, you don't have to do this part. If I tab, it says address filter, application, interface, port filter, profile, there's rule. So I can continue tabbing, and if I just remember as net firewall something, I could tab, and maybe if reading the screen it'll remind me, hey, I need to look at the net firewall rules, or maybe just tabbing through them will key into something that I'm wanting to look at. So get net firewall rule. Sweet. I'm going to hit enter. It's going to show me so much junk I won't be able to handle it all. but that's a good thing. So you get something like this on the screen. You're like, that's a lot of information. I want to pare that down and only look at some certain things. So I'm kind of looking. I see name and a bunch of stuff, and then I see name again and a bunch of stuff. So it's every single firewall rule. It's giving me so much information about it that I can't really digest that on the screen. So looking on the information here, so I can kind of tell that name, and it goes down to policy source type, name, policy. So I'm going to look at this grouping right here. Everybody see that? So what information do I want to look at? So reading through all of this, what do you think that I need to pull out and glance at? And if you've not dealt with the firewall rules, you may not be able to figure it out. But one key piece of information that I'm wanting to look at is the port allowed or not? And that is the enable option. See, that one's allowed. If I look up here in this other group, there's something called WMI thingy, a majig up here. Is it allowed? It's not. It's being blocked by the firewall. So that's something I want to look at. So I just want to look at the enabled, and I'll look at one other thing. I either want to look at the name, the display name, the description, or the display group. I want to look at the display group. Some Microsoft, some services operate on more than one port. Like FTP operates on port 21 and 20 and some ports up in the 40,000 range. So if there was a FTP server set up, it would probably have a whole bunch of FTP rules for every single port number. And you could just display the group. Normally the group is just one line for all of them. So I've run PowerShell and I've played with Core, and I've done a lot of reading online to figure out the display group's the best thing to look at in the firewall listing. So how do we pare it down? I cleared my screen. You don't have to clear yours, but I hit my up arrow key to bring the command back up. That's real cool. I don't have to retype it. I hit the up arrow key. It brings my last command that I typed in back up on the screen. Get net firewall rule. I'm going to put a space. I'm going to pipe. You remember pipe from Linux? It says take all the output and store it in RAM, and then let another program do something with it. So that's what we're going to do. All that huge output, we're going to say store that in RAM, and we're going to run it through a filter. PowerShell has a filter that follows pretty much SQL language, accessing a Microsoft, or not Microsoft, accessing a database using the SQL language, structured query language. So you can pare down and view columns by using a select command, followed by a space and the column headings. Remember the two column headings we wanted? We wanted display group, comma, and I wanted the other column heading, the enabled, right? That's why it might not have been good for you to clear your screen, because you could look at the column headings and make sure you got it spelled correctly, that you spelled display group. Is it display group? Yeah, display group. And then comma enabled. And then if you hit enter this time, it'll only show you the information. You can scroll up. And now you see it's in column format, where you have the display group and then whether it's enabled or not. Well, that's a lot easier to look at than anything else going on. Well, yes, that was a dog barking if you're listening to this online. So looking through here, again, you'd probably have to go in Google. Like, I want to remotely administer a Windows Server core. How do I enable the firewall rules? What firewall rules should I enable? Yes.
Mine's not do that. I'll probably go from the
Okay, so looking through all of this list here, what do we need to open? We see all this stuff false, so all this stuff is blocked. Like the ability to remotely shut down, remote event viewer, monitor, remote schedule task. Scroll through here. Remote volume management is turned off. Remote event log. So I know by prior experiences, pretty much all the stuff that starts with the remote needs to be allowed through the firewall. Other things that need to be allowed through the firewall: Windows management instrumentation. So all these Windows management, WMI here. The ability to manage the firewall remotely, so we can use a graphical tool to connect in and view the firewall settings in the future. Also needs to be enabled. Right now, I think that's all that needs to be enabled. The file and printer sharing will probably enable when we add the service roles and stuff to it, but when we try to make it a file server, we probably want to come back and re-look at the firewall rules and see if they are set correctly. So to make this a little bit faster and not having to put in a command to say remote service management, enable it, and then go back and type in remote event log management and enable it, and then enable remote schedule task management. Instead of typing all of that, we can use something called wildcard character and just say enable everything that starts with remote. Make the commands a lot faster. So we're going to type in set. Actually I just hit my up arrow key and I can go arrow over and change this word get. Just change the letter G actually to an S. So it's set net firewall rule. Now I told you, you normally use the get command and then there's also the corresponding set on most stuff. So you've got the information, you've seen what the settings are, now you want to set them to something different. So I'm going to put a dash, and we use the display group, right? I'm going to display, and I'm going to type a G, and I'm going to hit tab, and it should complete the switch for me. That's the cool thing about PowerShell. It even completes the switches. That's something the Bash Linux wouldn't do. It wouldn't complete a switch. It would complete a file path and a file name, but it wouldn't complete a switch. So that's cool. Or you could also just like display and tab through the different switches, because there's multiple displays. There's display name, display group. I think there's only two. Yeah. So the tab key lets me tab through, and I think you can just put a dash and start hitting tab, and it'll tab through every single option if you didn't know what they all were. So the display group, I'm going to do quotation. I'm going to type in remote, and I'm going to put a star or an asterisk. I'm going to close the quotation mark. So the asterisk, you should have learned in operating system class, means all characters. 0 or more characters. So anything that has remote or anything after remote, work on it. So instead of having to type each of those names individually, it says, well, all the ones with remote, do it. And we're going to do dash enabled. Again, I just typed in EN and hit tab, and it finished my spelling. I can't spell. Sometimes I have typos. One finger goes faster than the other, so I like to tab complete because I know it's correct when it completes it. And then I'm going to put in true, because we see the values can be false or they can be true, and the values under display group are as the name. If I hit enter, it should set all of those to true. I had a little blue flash on the screen. Sometimes it shows a progress bar, but it set those so fast it was just a really quick flash. I see a few reds, so let's see. Set net firewall rule, display group, remote star. You have a space between your dash and enable. So just hit your up arrow key and take that space out. That dash has to be right up beside the enable. Also display group, the same thing. There's a space between the dash and display group. So very similar into Linux. The only thing that's different in here, Linux would have had 2 dashes. PowerShell just uses 1 dash. So y'all may have noticed that. So that is one difference. Not a big difference. I don't know if 2 dashes would work. Probably not. I don't know. I haven't tried it. They try to make it kind of similar to a Unix. So Unix scripters would be a little bit more comfortable. The ls command works. pwd command works. A lot of those are aliased in. Clear works. So I can verify that worked by hitting my up arrow key until that I get back to my get command. And again, Unix, Linux work the same way. You add your up arrow key to bring back commands. And then I will hit enter. And now I can notice that the remote services here are now set to true. Now Windows Management Instrumentation and Firewall is still set to false, so we gotta go back and fix those. I scroll up and I see my remote event management is now allowed. Remote desktop's allowed. All the stuff that had a remote in it is now allowed. So it worked. So it's always good. Once you set something, go back and get the information, make sure it actually operated correctly. Okay, I'm going to hit my up arrow a couple times. And I'm going to change the word remote to, so I'm going to look at my list. So Windows Management and Windows Firewall. So if I just put Windows Star, it might work, but I need to make sure there's not something else that has the word Windows in it. I'm going to scroll and look for that. If I just use Windows Star, will it work or will it enable too much? It might enable too much. Because it would enable this Windows Remote Management compatibility mode for older. That might be a port that should not be allowed open. It probably has lower security. It may operate on a lower encryption level. So I probably don't want to do just Windows Star. So I probably need to do Windows Management and Windows Firewall. So I'm going to leave the star there and remove the word remote and do Windows space Firewall. It does have to be, definitely have to be in quotes now because there's a space in that. Anytime you have a space, you always have to surround quotation marks. So Windows Firewall, I can hit enter, it'll enable that. I can hit the up arrow key and I can change this to management. I'm going to scroll up and look at that other Windows one up here real quick again. What was it? It was Windows Remote. So Windows Management's not going to be. I make sure I got enough where that they're not the same, or that it's unique. And I'll hit enter. So I've got those two enabled to true. Hit my up arrow key until I get back to my get. And I'll run it again and make sure that these bottom sections are now set to true. And they are. So the Windows management instrumentation allows you to control some more in-depth features of Windows, like drivers. So it's really cool stuff that you can get into. So you played with PowerShell. You kind of got a little bit of the basics. When they start talking about PowerShell and test out next week, maybe you can understand, since you've already used a command or two when he starts talking about it, that he'll talk about the noun dash verb and stuff like that. He'll probably show you a few PowerShell commands into the system. I'm going to leave my PowerShell window open. I'm just going to minimize it. And I'm going to try to open up computer management now by right-clicking on Server 3. Remember last time it did not work. It failed. So now I'm going to open up computer management on Server 3 and see if it times out. It doesn't. It comes up and shows me computer management. I can also view Event Viewer. So this would be on Server 3. So remember, Server 3 is core only, so I don't have all these graphical tools. I can on Server 1 though, they're installed and they can read across the network and you can view everything, like the local administrator accounts and stuff on it. Device Manager is one of the tools that remote registry service would have to be enabled for that to work. A lot, and most of the time even it won't let you control devices remotely because you might accidentally disable a device and lock the remote computer up. So by default they've got that blocked. What about disk management? My disk management is down. Services? Services work. So this disk management's down. That's probably another firewall rule, having that blocked. I don't need to mess with disk right now.
Mine said RPC server not available.
Yep. For now, I don't think that's going to be a problem. There's another tool. It's actually computer management is becoming legacy. Server Manager has a new storage services tool that operates a little bit differently than this disk management here. It is probably allowed too. This is probably one of the legacy things we left firewalled. That legacy management is probably blocking this, which is probably a good thing. I'm going to go close down computer management. A lot more of these tools here will be more readily accessible, so we can remotely manage Server 3 if we need it. So what do y'all think about that? Pretty cool, huh? I think it's cool. Like, I don't want to see that command line, although we did PowerShell commands on it.
It'd be nice to have the visual user interface.
Now, Server 3 is going to become a file server in the future, and I don't want y'all to do this. We're learning PowerShell. You can add, remove roles and features graphically very easily, so I don't want you to run through this process. You select what server that you want it to operate on, and I could easily come in here and just checkbox and add features. Notice there's not as many roles. Core server can't run everything that the graphical interface can, but it can run a lot of stuff. It can be a full Active Directory, any of the Active Directory stuff, DHCP, DNS, be a web server, file and print server, a Hyper-V guest. I'm not really sure what's missing. There's like only a couple of services that are different. So we will, I'm going to take a picture of that we'll move it over here. And I'm just going to go ahead and back up and look at server 2 and see if I can see if there is any difference, or am I just thinking wrong. So now there's a scroll bar, so there's some differences here. So what's different? So all the Active Directory, device cell, DHCP, DNS, fax server. So it can't be a fax server. Multi-point services. Network policy and access service. So there's Hyper-V, print and document, remote access, remote desktop volume, web server. Looks like Windows deployment services is not allowed to be done on the core system. So a couple of services there that you can't do on core, but almost everything can be done on core. Almost. Snipping tool is great. So I'm going to cancel this out. Just about to cancel it out. Server 3, we're going to make it a file server. We're going to enable data deduplication and file server resource manager. We may actually do both. We may run and use the graphical tool to install one of them, and maybe PowerShell to install another one. So I'm going to cancel this for now and bring my PowerShell window back up. I'm going to clear the screen. You don't have to clear your screen again if you don't want to. So I'm going to do another get dash, and I've got to figure it out, so just hold on. I need to get something about Windows features, so I'm going to try Windows, I guess it's get Windows feature. I can leave a voicemail. That's a 77. That's a scammer. That's a car insurance thing. Okay, so this is kind of a pretty layout. It shows X's where things are installed and no X's where things are not installed, except we can't click on them. This bottom section looks like these here are features and not roles. So I'm going to scroll up until I can get to the roles.
What was the command to get there?
This is get dash Windows features. So I've scrolled up until I can see the file and storage services here. And I said we wanted to enable file server, right? And if I look over here, the name, the actual service name column is in the middle. So it's fs-file server. I think I can highlight that, and if I highlight it, maybe if I hit enter, I think that copies it. I think if you highlight it and hit enter, it copies that. So if it is a long name, or you're worried about spelling, I'm pretty sure you highlight. Let me make sure. If I come down here at the bottom and if I right click, yes, it pastes it. So that's a neat. You see like a big long name that you need to enable, you can highlight it and hit enter, and it copies it into the buffer, and then right click and paste it where that you need it. So that's what I was wanting to enable, is the file server. So I just highlighted the name and hit enter on the keyboard, the highlight disappeared. That means it copied it into the buffer. So I want that installed. It says it's available. So now I need to make it installed. I think it's enable instead of install. I think enable is the verb. I think it would be enable Windows feature probably. There's enable optional feature, maybe that's it. Enable Windows optional feature. So maybe that's the command. I'm going to put a dash here. There's probably some switches to add in. I'm going to tab through. The first one that comes up is feature name. So I can right click and paste that in there. I'm going to hit space and I'm going to put a dash and I'm going to tab through again. There's package name. All. Limited access. Source. No restart. Path. Online. Windows directory. System drive. Scratch directory. Verbose. Debug. Error action. Warning action.
So what's after the Windows optional feature?
Dash feature name.
Yeah. I don't know that it's feature name or package name, so I'm going to hit enter and see if I get a mistake. It seems like it's enable Windows optional feature, feature name, and then fs file server. Should have scrolled up and seen what the column heading was in that middle column. But I'm going to hit enter and see if it finds this. It doesn't find it, so that probably means it's package name. I'm going to backspace this to the dash, and I'm going to hit tab until it goes to package name, and I'm going to try that. This probably will work. It doesn't.
Maybe something with that FS, because if you hit tab whenever you have to serve, it doesn't complete server.
And it may not be enable Windows optional feature. It may be install Windows feature. I think that might be the problem. Yep, and that's the problem. It's going to be install Windows feature. And we're going to be dash name the FS file server, and then we're going to put another dash, and we're going to include all sub features. That looks like a better round out. But see how I was like just tabbing through, trying stuff, and you can sometimes do that and muddle around, but you can't do that if you're not running the PowerShell a lot. And if you've done a lot of PowerShell, you can sometimes do the tabs and the searching and muddle your way through and find stuff. But you wouldn't get to that point until that you've played with PowerShell for a couple of years, at least, probably. If you're working in the field and you're doing PowerShell an awful lot, of course the time would be shortened 3 to 6 months, and you'd start being able to do this. But yeah, just randomly playing with it off and on, it'd take you a while to be able to do what I'm doing up here. Google a lot. That's how I got to this point. So install Windows feature. The name's going to be FS file server, and then we're going to put dash include all sub features. Again, I just used the tab key until it brought the switches up correctly. And don't hit enter yet. I'm going to hit enter and see if it works. So like I said, yep, it works. So yeah, that's a lot more complicated than doing it from the command line. Windows 10 has some things built in it that are called like Cortana, and there's some Microsoft Store games and stuff that are that are pre-built into your Windows 10 that you cannot uninstall, you can uninstall them from PowerShell. You can remove Windows feature or remove Windows optional feature, whatever, from Windows 10, and you can actually remove Cortana from your system if you wanted. I did that to my Windows. There's like a lot of stuff in Windows 10. Like, I don't use all of these apps. The app that opens up pictures takes like 45 seconds to open up a picture. Microsoft Paint takes like 2 seconds to open a picture up. So I was like, I'll just get rid of this Windows viewer thing. There's a lot of those apps that for some reason they were just really, really slow, and the old apps still built in the system were a lot faster. So yeah, I did PowerShell and removed a bunch of stuff. Then I just went and got Windows Enterprise, and it didn't come with all those junk, or the App Store, and put that on my system. Exit code, success. No restart required. So if I hit my up arrow key until I get back to the get command, get Windows feature, I can see that there should be an X beside. See, there's an X now beside file server. I believe they have a video on this in Test Out showing how to add a feature. Now I want to go through the graphical and add another role in there. I'm going to hit exit and exit out. Exit another time. It closes that out. Now I want to go and you can right click Server 3 and add role and feature. So we'll do a graphical way of doing it. We'll hit next. Role based, just hit next again. It should be on Server 3, but make sure it's highlighted on Server 3 before you go next. Normally just wait a little bit and a refresh brings it up. So I'm going to expand out file and storage services. Expand out file and iSCSI services. And we're going to enable data deduplication. File server resource manager. And file server VSS agent. If you're going to be a generic file server, you're ever setting up a generic file server for somebody, there's 4 checkboxes under file and iSCSI services that you should normally always turn on. And those would be the file server, data deduplication, file server resource manager, and the VSS. Stands for volume shadow copy, VSS. Volume shadow copy sets up a way where you can do, you have to go specify and turn it on after you got the service installed, but when people make changes to files, it keeps a copy of the old file, a certain number of copies based on how much space you say cache old versions of files. So if somebody screws a file up, they can normally right click and go to a previous version of it. They can even right click on a folder and go to a previous version of a folder and see deleted files and bring them back. And backup utilities will also use VSS service to help back up the system. Backups can't back up open files, but they can use VSS and that feature to back up an older copy of the file. So really cool service to have on. And we probably study that more in LAN 2 than we do this class, but I'll go ahead and turn it on. We just hit next. I don't need any features installed. I'm going to hit next. I'm going to click install. So you see, you can do it from the command line, or you can do it from graphical tool. All this is doing is the install Windows feature and put those commands in the background. We could have exported this configuration. It actually would have been, cancel that. It should have showed PowerShell commands in that config, or what would have been pushed out to it. If you had 100 servers to do that on, you'd probably export it and push that configuration out with a PowerShell script to all the 100 machines. That is a lot faster than clicking. Later on, we will get to where we can do for loops, where we can go tell it to get information, and it'll operate on the amount of stuff that we got. We don't have to know how many things there are. We say, go figure out how much stuff there is. Now do that for each one of those things. That is really awesome to be able to do that. So Server 3 is now got all those roles installed on it. So this is Microsoft's, what they talk about, their total cost of ownership, TCO, total cost of ownership. That's how they try to advertise to everybody. Give us money, we'll lower your total cost of ownership with administration in the long run. The downside is you have to have IT personnel that know how to do all this remote management, how to use Server Manager and write PowerShell scripts and link stuff together, use remote desktop connections and things to speed stuff up. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter. Total cost of ownership would jump up. Unix and stuff, same thing. You got to have somebody who knows how to write bash scripts or other scripting languages to automate things, because they can do very similar. They don't have a lot of graphics. You do have some graphics. At Unix, Red Hat has a web interface. You can actually log into the web interface and be connected to all your servers and control them through a graphical web interface. That's really cool. Helps lower total cost. But when you get into those scripting things, and you got hundreds of servers, there's where the graphics kind of goes away of being able to really lower. It's the scripting in the background. In that case, I don't know which one. If you got a good knowledgeable person, it's probably about tied. Do you have any questions? Not much. So we installed those services on Server 3. That means we could use other tools in here, and we can actually, you're not going to do this today, but I'm just going to show you real quick what we would do later in the future. Because we install those file server features, I could quickly go in here and say I want to share out something on Server 3 and type in some type of name. Like I said, we're not going to share that. Nobody remember that. So I could set permissions and stuff on that folder. I'm going to cancel. Because we got it added into the server manager from a graphical tool, I can tell it to create shared folders, and I think I can even see the disk. Yep. So with this tool, I told it there's a more modern tool, so that legacy computer management, to see the hard drives. So I can see the hard disk on Server 3 and manage them if I needed to. So that's all centralized management stuff. And we'll add another drive to Server 3 and do some stuff with it. So cool. Next week you'll go through test out 3, and you should see a lot of the stuff that we kind of played with today. So if no questions, I think we'll stop early and go to lunch. 7 minutes isn't a whole lot early, but